What does it mean?
Okay, well, welcome everyone to the afternoon meeting. I'd like to begin with acknowledging that we're here on Treaty 4. Our school division also has land on Treaty 2 territory, and it's a traditional territory of the Cree, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, Sotee, and the Métis Nation. We in Southeast Cornerstone respect and honor the treaties that were made on all territories, and we are committed to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous nations and in the spirit of education, reconciliation, and collaboration. So I would ask for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll move that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you, Megan. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. If anyone has a conflict of interest on any of the items on the agenda, you can declare it now or when the item is called for. Hearing none, we'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the last regular board meeting.
I'll move that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of May 28, 2025 be approved as presented.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. At this time, we will ask if anyone has any items for roundtable. If you've done anything exciting in your communities, anything you'd like to share.
I can go. I attended the Weyburn Comprehensive Grad on Saturday. There were a lot of graduates. 150-ish in there. I didn't get an exact count. It was very nice ceremony, and the thing I noticed was that a very, very large percentage of the students were going on to post-secondary education. Some of them were taking a gap year and then going on, but they were all had a whole variety of different things that they were going into. It was kind of interesting. So that was, and I hear the rest of the day went well too.
Thank you, Norma.
I attended the junior musical. They did Little Mermaid at the Singapore Park School, and it was a blast. It was so much fun.
That would be good.
They did a fantastic job, and they have an incredibly talented teacher there, Kendra Gonzi, and she's amazing with the students. And my daughter got to participate in it, and since she had a blast and learned a lot too, so it was a really good experience for those kids, and that's all.
Yes.
Kevin and I went to the ECS graduation on Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
And it was very well attended, very well done. 203 graduates, I think it was. I was surprised at how many people took this gap year. I didn't know anything. Year off, and then I was.
I think a little over 1,000 people there.
Yeah.
And I had a special granddaughter graduating, so I've been there every year, but this one was kind of more special because I had a granddaughter going out through it this year.
That's great. Did she say what she was going to do? Is she going to take a gap year or is she going to school?
She's working at Power Dodge now, so she's staying there for a year and then she wants to go to school in Saskatoon next year.
No. See? It's good. Thank you. Anybody else?
We're in the midst of staffing right now, with all the teachers and EAs that we're hiring. So we're getting there. We're not quite there yet. A handful of teachers positions, and there's a lot of postings for EA positions. So if anybody's a teacher out there, please apply. please apply.
Out there in
It'd be
the
wonderful.
in the cyber world, we're looking for qualified
Do you know a
teachers.
teacher? Tell them to apply.
All right.
Word by elections.
I know about a couple of teachers that are taking temporary contracts that already retired and decided to come back and help us out. So that's nice. So I have number 6 on the agenda is welcome to Jesse. I'm going to be presenting the biannual transportation report for Andy today.
Yes.
So welcome.
Jesse will be our new manager of transportation.
Look forward to working with you guys going forward, and thanks for having me here today. So what we're going to look at is the biannual June 2025 report. We're going to reference the column on the left for the biannual June 2024, So you can see total number of students transported in 2024 of June was 4,593. Year to date now is 4,680. That's an increase of around 87 students. Total number of bus routes last year this time was 155 routes throughout our division. This year we have 157. So an increase of 2. That kind of correlates with the 87 increased students that we see in the last year here. Number of unfilled routes. We had 2 in Carlisle, 1 in Weldon, and UCS as of June last year. This year we have 1 in Arcola, 2 in Carlisle, 1 in Lindale, and 1 in Redvers. But we're pretty sure that we're going to be able to fill a couple of these over the summer months with some prospective candidates coming up. So, number of route cancellations. We had 1,213 routes canceled June 2024. This year to date, 1,588. So that's a little bit of an increase from last year to this year. Just breaking it down a little bit further, 42 and a half days for mechanical versus in 2024 versus 89 days year to date now in June 2025. So we had a little bit more mechanical dates here this year. Weather, we had 172 half days and 249 full days in 2024. And 257 half days and 267 full days in 2025. No substitute drivers, 173 half days and 577 full days in June 2024. And in June 2025, we had 173 half days and 692 full days. Our average rural one-time rider in minutes is 48 minutes in June 2024. And in 2025, it mirrors what we see in 2024 at 48-minute total average ride time. Our longest rural route one-way ride time in minutes is 90 minutes from Unger / Torquay to Estevan, and it's the same in 2025 with 90 minutes from Estevan to Torquay and Weyburn to Unger.
That's a long time.
It is. The problem is they're the farthest routes out. So even to drive without making stops, you're looking at an hour one way.
Anyhow.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's
Jeez, that's long.
it's geography for the most cases.
Yeah, logistically, it's far away from everywhere, unfortunately. But when you live down there, I expect you're used to driving everywhere. So
Yeah, that's true.
yeah,
It's like being in Montana.
yes, yeah, absolutely.
So,
Roughly how many students are on that?
On which bus?
The-
The longest
longest
one-way
ride.
route, how many kids is that?
The longest route from Weyburn to from Unger to Weyburn is around 12 to 15 students, and it's probably around the 14 to 18 students going from Unger to ECS. So, and that's right from grade 9 to grade 12 for both of those age categories.
Those kids would all be on for that amount of time,
Yeah.
but there'd be a family of that's on for that longest one.
It would be the first
The
stop.
first stop and then, yeah.
Yeah, and then it gets progressively better as you go down the road.
Thank you.
any other
Yeah.
questions?
So do we have any open, I know we train our bus drivers to get their license and that type of stuff.
Yep.
Do we have any just open, like, training for anyone kind of thing, or is it just?
Yes, if they apply or if they want to come to, we'll train them.
Yeah.
They don't have to have a job first, we'll train them to get them on the casual list if we have to.
Yeah, that's generally how you go. Is you go through. There's just some documentation you have to go through. So you have to be accepted to work at the division. So clean driver's abstract, the criminal record check, and then from there you meet with your servicing area foreman. As long as the meeting goes well, then we proceed with the training aspect with the pre-trip, and then the driven test as well that we do in house. So.
And they've got some really good people, bus drivers that help with those pieces.
Yeah, we did. We actually have correlated with SGI and worked with our trainers here in the Weyburn and Estevan area specifically, and made sure that the pre-trip and driving training we are offering to our new applicants are up to their standards, and they have within the last year produced some testing with those SGI people and have very, very, very good feedback and results. So it's very positive that way.
So, and you do the training here, do they actually do the driver's test or does somebody from SGI do their driver's test?
So the SGI, so the driving test itself is all done through SGI. We run through mock tests on the pre-trip and then the driven test. So we do that for days as close to that driven test date as possible. So it's as fresh into those applicants' mind as it possibly can be. And then generally, even the morning before that specific test date, we'll have the driver and instructor meet them at the bus, go through any last minute, questions, concerns, any additional little tidbits of training they need to hopefully get that passing test so we can fill in the benefits.
Good, that's excellent. Kind of prepares them, and sometimes testing is hard on people, but if they
Yeah.
have some practice, that's certainly
Yeah,
helps.
absolutely, I agree.
Have you had anybody inquire about driving that road in Rivers?
Yes, actually, we are working with a couple of people out there, and I'm very, very confident the one in Lindale and the one in Redvers will be filled before the beginning of next year. Absolutely.
I'm tired of getting the same phone call from the same guy.
We are as well.
You know what, Jim, you ask them if they would be able to drive the bus.
Yeah.
Well, I thought he was gonna try, but somebody told me he swore too much.
Maybe don't ask him to drive the bus, then maybe Jim would be.
Was that somebody who he was talking to on the phone?
I don't know, there was lots of swear words on my phone or in my answer machine anyway.
Really? Yeah, well, you don't have, unfortunately, people shouldn't be able to do that.
He was supposed to be going to work and he couldn't take time to drive his kid to school and go to work at the same time, so I don't know what he ended up doing.
So you get that.
I know
You
it
always
must-
forward them on to us if you get those, Jim, and
It's frustrating for parents, I'm sure, when this happens, but we're doing the best we can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, like it's not like-
And the application process, it does take some time, to get that criminal record check, driver's abstract, and then to get you into your doctor to get that commercial driver's medical exam. Those are all parameters and instances that are not within the division's control, but it's required just for the safety and nature of the position of being a bus driver. We want to make sure that we're protecting our students as much as possible and putting a safety-oriented driver in that
So
position.
this will probably start in September then.
Yes, sir, yeah.
Okay, is there any other questions for Jesse? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept this report.
I'll make a motion that the board acknowledge and receive the biannual transportation report presented by West Area Transportation Foreman Jesse Forsyth with focus on transportation performance, information, and emerging issues.
Thank you, Devona. Any discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Good job. Right.
No, well,
Thank you very much.
well, we're on this side.
It's on that side. But it's
Real surprise. It's Carolyn.
Yeah.
The Walmart day out. See something?
I'll pull over to the end, I think.
Oh, yeah, it's right now. I just missed it. It was so little. Thank you, Carolyn.
Grammar soups, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never no bus.
Yeah.
Keith, you can get
Here comes the Black Justice.
they're coming right now, yep.
I'm gonna take your chairs to sit.
In trouble.
Hey, you know. No, she's coming over here.
Why would you want to?
I feel real sorry for you.
Real story.
You guys don't have to.
You do fit a little bit.
Look at all the old Black dresses today.
I know, look at all these. It's supposed to be blind day, fun day. Well, thank you team for joining us here. We have the last wall walk of the 24-25 school year. We'll be meeting in the 25-26 school year. First off, just want to say thank you to a few of our team members who've been a part of our wall walks for a large period of time, whether that be at the board level. We used to do this in the morning, in our in-camera session, or in the afternoon, or part of the wall walks they've been with as part of the learning support team in a lot of the decisions that get made to move forward to improve outcomes for kids in schools. Just thank you to Kevin, Jackie, and Cheryl and Mike for all your work over the years. I really appreciate all of the pieces you've contributed to that. Thank you very much. now that we said goodbye to the old Cheryl, we actually have the new Cheryl here with us today, and Jillian Costello. She'll be taking over as coordinator of student services. She's here to observe and just see what a wall walk's all about in the school. Just a reminder that you're all on camera so that we can record this posthumously and watch it back as I do these things to see how we're doing. This wall walk sees a lot of good progress in some places, and you see there's some work to do yet in some other places. I'm pretty impressed by some of our early years data, some of our mathematics data. Still see some concerns around that 4 to 6 and some lack of growth in some of those pieces that we need to do a little more exploration of, I think. Our data has increased in some places, decreased in some places. I don't want to steal any thunder from the people who are going to be presenting this here. Just a few things to keep in mind as we're looking at some of our mental health and well-being and some of our transitions pieces off the start is that this is the first year we've done the Our School survey twice in the year. So there's 2 pieces to compare to. There's the start of the year to compare to, which was a little higher than it would have typically been. And then there's previous years to compare to as well. So keep that in the back of your mind as you're looking at it. We've done some work this year, just started some work on some of the transition plan pieces. I know there aren't a lot of metrics yet through the provincial education plan that relate back to that transitions piece, but I know that there's been some work on the transitions document that I know the coordinators and superintendents and Tracy and Cheryl in particular, as well as Jackie, have been a large part of creating that transitions document that puts us in a good place, I think, in terms of being able to put some plans into place for what that looks like for our students in schools, especially as we look at that transition into, through, and out of school. And with that, I'm going to turn over to the people that have all of the information that they're going to give. We're going to start off over here.
Well, there hasn't been a meeting that I spoke at this year that Keith has not stolen a little bit of my thunder.
You're welcome. You're welcome. That's
So just thinking about that transition document, all the work that was done by our superintendents and our coordinating team that went and reviewed basically where everyone, they reflected on where they are at as a school as far as students going into, throughout, and exiting the school system. So our transitions slides here are from the Art School Survey. The first 2 we would place in the throughout schooling experience. So the first 2 questions, or the first 2 slides here, are about rigor and ultimately how the students feel their classes are going and whether they're appropriate, whether they're getting the right amount of support from their teachers. The teachers are providing examples and they're providing, like I said, support as they're working on their classes and working throughout the school system. So we do have listed here as the first fall screening and the second one of the year. In the elementary school, students were exactly the same spot as we were, right in that provincial norm, exact same score. There's a slight decrease with our high school students, but again, we're right in that, hovering right in that provincial norm of, we feel like our teachers are supporting us through our classes. The last 3 that I'm going to talk about are exactly as their title talks about. Do you have aspirations to finish high school? Do you have aspirations to pursue a trade? Do you have aspirations to go to college or university? So as you dig into this, these numbers catch me off guard. It's the percentage, it states, it's the percentage of students that want to finish high school. I look at those numbers and say, excuse me? 68% of our kids want to finish, 66%. Now, dug into it, there's 5 answers that you can give on it's this question only. Do you want to finish high school? The answers are strongly disagree, disagree, agree, strongly agree, or neither agree or disagree. What this is stating for us is only the students who select strongly agree. So it disregards all students that agree. I'm not sure that we're talking them through the fact that, well, if you want to show up on the list, you need to say strongly agree. That's why we are right where the province is. I don't think there's any concern. There's a little bit of a drop, which I thought was interesting. Is it getting a little bit harder throughout the year? I'm not sure why a few 2% less of our kids want to finish. Strongly agree to finish high school. We had in the trades, we have a slight increase, and we have the inverse effect on our Pursue University. Slight decrease. I think that's related to all the opportunities that we do have in southeastern Saskatchewan. This makes sense to me. We're right at or above that provincial norm. So that I think that definitely speaks to what's available to our students. But that is, just as you look at that, when I look at a percentage of students, we have our 91% grad rate, how is it possible that only 66% actually want to do that? Well, that's not the case. It's just the way it's the way the question is answered and then it's reported. So just something to look at. As we see these graphs, I'm going to turn it over to Jackie. She is going to talk about the transition into school in the early years.
I just have a very quick question
Sure.
about apprenticeship and trade schools. Do we know our trade school applications, or not applications, spaces, are they looking for more students? Like, should we be working to try and get more students that way? Because certainly in the marketplace, we're short of tradespeople.
Yeah, I can't speak to whether they're filling all of their available spots. We do have, maybe Mike could jump in on the apprenticeship credits that we do offer for our students. We can take 4 apprenticeship credits, and I'm not sure how many of those are being utilized or taken.
We have more apprenticeship credits this year than we've had in the past 8 years. So we have more intake going direct. That's essentially direct into the workforce, pursuing a trade. When we talk about specific like program placements and stuff like that, the typical trades like the millwright, mechanic, those type of programs are only really limited by employers, because a lot of times our students will be taking, they'll be actually working while they're pursuing their trade, and so they're kind of moving in and out of the workplace and trade school arena. There's very few programs that our career development counselors would say have maxed out their capacity, and usually they're the nursing programs are really tough things to get into that have a requirement list a mile long. But in general, most of our post-secondary partners that we work primarily with, they have room for students. We just got to make sure we're meeting the interests of the kids want to do.
So Tammy, typically because the way those programs are set up, it's 1,800 hours, I believe, of
Yes.
work, and then they have their 6 to 8 weeks blocks.
Yeah.
If the post-secondary gets enough of them, they set up more blocks throughout the year. So there are spaces for those kids if they.
It's just a matter of finding, like, say, the employers.
Yes,
who
yeah.
take them on. Thank you.
When they
Sorry.
we went to the grade 12 confidence rounds, and I was amazed at how many they give you what they want to do in the future. And one thing that really stood out to me was the amount of people going in trades, power engineering, mechanics, electricians. Like, I haven't seen that many before, but this particular year, it was something that really picked up on.
But other wall walks, we have had presentations around credit attainment and graduation rates. That's just not at this time of year. But these are some of the other ways that we can track that. And Jackie can talk more about the transitions into school.
Sure. I'll talk about these 3 visuals first. That's reading level based on attendance. So attendance levels and reading levels together in the same graph. And we showed these same visuals to you in March. What was interesting was that when we looked at the grade 1 data, this graph represents all of the grade 1 students. The grade 1 students who are reading below grade level and the grade 1 students who are reading at or above grade level. And then each of these bars indicates their attendance. And so attendance at 90 to 100% is in the final column in each of the sides of this graph. In March, we had 48% of our grade 1 students who were reading below grade level, but we're still attending at 90 to 100%. So we thought, that's like not exactly what we wanted to see. However, we trusted that if we continued with that great attendance, that we would see the results at the end of the year. So we do. Instead of 48% of our students attending 90 to 100%, and reading below grade level, we now have 44% of our students reading at or above grade level and still attending at that 90 to 100%. So that's good news. It's what we predicted, and we've seen alignment there between good attendance and also reading at or above grade level. And it's what we predicted also because we saw in grade 2 that's exactly what was happening, and in grade 3 that's exactly what was happening. We just needed to give them some time to get there. Some of the things that we're working on in terms of reading in our school division, we've done a scan of all of our processes for reading instruction in some of these cornerstone units to make sure that we're aligning with the Saskatchewan Human Rights Commission report on reading in Saskatchewan, and we have curated resources and self-reflection tools for teachers that are based on research so that our teachers can be using best practice and not just be grabbing things off of the internet that look really pretty. They're guided now to best practice. And we also have our collaborative response model in every school where our principals as instructional leaders can be guiding teachers to support them with promising practices, research-based practices in reading instruction and other subjects. So that's it for that. Does anybody have any questions? So this is a visual that we've shown you a number of times. That's just our quarterly stats in the early learning program, and each one of those bars just represents a different group of students in early learning. And so the green bar is our total caseload. That's active and consultative caseload together. The active caseload is this blue bar. The referrals is the dark blue bar down there. So we've had 8 referrals over the past quarter. We've got 48 children that are receiving home visiting support and another 95 children that are receiving consultative support. That's basically in classrooms, so that's in our pre-K classrooms that are receiving that support most often. Our early years evaluation, we just finished our post-screen. So we know now that our kiddos came in the fall, around 60% of them had skills that were, that the tool would indicate that they had all the skills that they needed to take advantage of learning and instruction in the kindergarten classroom. And now that they've spent a year in kindergarten, we have about 82% of children who are ready to learn. And that's pretty typical. It's not, if you take a look at last year, they came in a little bit higher and they left a little bit lower. But over the past 5 years, it's kind of balanced out. We're kind of at a typical rate. And then each of the schools is separated out there. And that's the post-assessment. So that's the children as they're
So just continuing on with the learning and assessment priority, this next section is all STAR screen data. And so I'm going to start up at the top. So up at the top we have STAR screen converted to Fountas and Pinnell. So we've taken the STAR screen data here and converted it to Fountas and Pinnell reading levels. So we're looking at the grade 1's achieving at G at the end of the year, grade 2's L, grade 3's O. And so this is the year-over-year data, and this is the historical data. So same data, just shown in different ways. The year-over-year shows us what the grade 3's have done each of these previous years, the grade 2's each of these previous years, and the grade 1's. And over here we follow the cohorts. So for example, we can see this particular cohort here, same group of students or almost. So here is this present year when you're in grade 3, grade 2's the year before, grade 1's the same cohort. So you can see, regardless of where you look, strong growth patterns. And at the end of grade 3, we see in and around about 80% or above reading at grade level. Exactly typical and where we want them to be. So again, just to remember, the STAR screens it's just a tool for us to see where they're at and where we need to put their interventions and to monitor growth at the individual student level, teachers, individual classrooms for small groups, whole classrooms, it's for the principal to use with their whole school. It's for us to have a look at our areas and our team to look at the whole division to see where we want to put those good interventions in place. And to, as Jackie mentioned, really focus in on best practice. What is best practice when it comes to reading instruction? So a lot of work, great work being done there by our team. Right here we have the grade 2s and 3s French immersion reading scores. These are the grade 2s, these are the grade 3s. So that's right here, the APES, the students that go to the APES school right here in town. So you can see some good reading progress there too, in and around 80%. This next section here is the oral fluency. So this is the oral reading. These are used to predict reading success. So it's just a predictor. And again, teachers use this data to dig into to see what skills or where they need to build. And like Keith already mentioned, same as winter, grade 4, 5, and 6s are not growing, kind of stagnant, and even declining a little bit. So we've been having a lot of discussions around oral fluency, digging into the achievement data where those outcomes in each grade is comprehend and respond. Like grade 2 is 24, but every grade has an outcome that references oral reading, both silently and orally. So we can dig into that achievement data a little bit more. There's a larger discussion around if this is used as a predictor, well, we have growth everywhere when it comes to the comprehension. So here, the STAR CPMs, again, you can see grades 1 to 3 here, 2 to 4. These are this is year over year, this is historical. But grade 1 to 3, excellent growth. Fall, winter, spring, the year before, fall, winter, spring. Down here, the historical, same thing. When we look at 24, 25, these are the grade 3s. Fall, winter, spring, excellent growth. It's just when we get to our grade 4s and our 5s and 6s. But yet and this is norm referenced, but now over here, this is the comprehension part. These are the bigger reading tests that our kids are doing. There is growth everywhere for every grade, fall, winter, spring. So that's what we focus on. But again, the biggest piece of the STAR screens is that teachers are using them, looking at what skills they need to build on. They look at individual children, they look at small groups, they look at whole class. They do that individually as ELA teachers. They do that as within their student support team meetings. They also do that Jackie spoke to the great work that's being done in the collaborative team meetings. There's also going to be a new scope and sequence for grades 1 to 3 that's being developed by the ministry. That's going to be some important work for our team this upcoming year, along with new curriculum. But a real focus back to the resources being used, best practice, tier 1. So we have a lot of good work being done. And the comprehension is growing. And again, we just look at that baseline, we look to see where the growth is and what the needs are and where the interventions have to go. And Cheryl's going to talk about that. Any questions?
So that brings us to the STAR map, which are these 6 slides here. And slides are graphs. These ones right here are the year over year. This is 1 to 3, 4 to 6, and 7 to 9. And year over year is when grade 3, all the way up. So in our year over year, grade 1 to 3, they're like slight growth as we go up. The 4 to 5, as with the ELA or the reading screen, they're plateauing again. So our grade 4 to 5 plateau. Grade 6 though, there's the growth that's happening in grade 6. So that's good. And the same thing with grade 7, 8, and 9. There's some slight growth in those grades too, year over year. So grade 6 each year seems to be, slight growth. When we go to the math historical, which again is basically almost a cohort, they're not exactly the same students, but it's how they did in grade 2, then grade 3, so and going up. So here we have grade 1. They're showing growth. They were in grade 1 in 23, 24. This year they're in grade 2. So they were showing a little bit of growth into there, but it's not as good as we would like. Grade 2 to 5, they're plateauing again in their historical year to year there. Grade 6 and 7, and you can see that as you come up here, there's some good growth, some really good growth. So we want to see that growth going up from fall. So you can definitely see that. And then grade 7, and this is grade 8, and then grade 9, and that's where they're definitely showing some great growth in grade 7 or 8 and 9 as well. So we're kind of wondering here too, when we go back and it's like grade 2 to 5, they were like 2 to 6-year-olds back in 2020, and we know from early learning that those are some very, very critical years. So are we still catching up from that in all of this? Is that why there's the plateau in those particular grades? We don't know. What we do know is we were told, and the research was there, that it's going to take several years to bounce back and get all that growth back. So it's nice to see that our older kids are, that growth is there. The one thing here too, we put some course corrections into place, and we continue to focus on building thinking classrooms. I can never remember that line, but it's just a way to work in a math classroom, and it's different. It's not where you're sitting at your desk, you're doing word problem after word problem, and equation after equation. You're thinking, you're getting up, you're talking about it. You're not just sitting there. They even call it like flipping the front, and so that's not like here's the whiteboard, here's the chalkboard at the front, and the teacher's up there. There's a lot of interaction. So there's 14 basic principles or concepts that go into that. So we're really trying to work on that. We invited Susan Wilson to 2 different admin meetings to work on a math up lesson with the administrators. We had a grade 3 lesson, and then we had a grade 7 lesson. Because if we want our administrators to support our teachers with the new resource, they need to understand it. So, and it was very eye-opening. I had never experienced a math up lesson, and area and perimeter that we did that day with no pencil and no paper, I probably learned more and reinforced more through the games than I could have ever done with giving my students, here's this rhombus, here's this square, here's this rectangle, and just having them do stuff. And like the deep meaning and the deep learning, it's absolutely amazing. So that was really important. So that's definitely a good course correction for us. We also have the mathletes. Jackie and the team, they've been working really hard to have mathletes in every single school. Those mathletes they've gone to the summer conference the last 2 years so they can come back and support in their schools. And starting in August, kindergarten to grade 9, there's Math Up PD, very beginning of the school year, to try to support all the math teachers so that they can work together then in their schools across grade levels to support and use that. The one thing though, if we just look at this, look at all the green in math. Look at all the green and yellow. Look, the red compared to our reading, it's quite drastic. So when you look at these 6, it's like, I think we do need to celebrate how we do have some really good screen data in math. So I think we just need to continue on that path, and it will probably even be better. It's really hard when you start to get to, that little bit to bump, because you're always going to have students that struggle. We screen just about every student. We don't, we'll take that out because they don't read, or take this out. We screen absolutely just about every student. And the teachers, they do that because even if they struggle, but what growth can they do for their grade level? So that's something to be really proud of too, is that, absolutely try to capture data for everybody. Any questions about math?
Can you, not the math, but the reading, just want to jump back to that. Can you give me an example of what you might be doing in course correction for grades 4 to 6? Like just 1 or 2 examples of what changes might be made.
Well, right now we've been doing a lot of work with bringing in some of the different resources and like UFly, and we're starting to try to work with some of those things, then get some of the RTI coaches. Just at our last RTI meeting, we did a lot on, trying to see, what was the
visual processing?
Yeah, visual processing, and so we did a lot of work around there and how we can put some of those pieces together so that they'll go back. So we're doing work with our RTI so that they can go back and with some of those small group and stuff, and then share that too with some of their teachers. Okay, so yeah, we did a lot of work on that.
The other thing we're doing is that we're doing a bit of digging into, because when you look at the instructional reading levels and the criterion reference pieces and opposed to the norm reference pieces, is they had ourselves questioning a little bit, okay, what is the oral reading fluency actually telling us? If this is a screen that's supposed to determine whether or not they're comprehending at the end of the day, but they are comprehending at the end of the day, what is it telling us? And is this important enough to focus on this particular piece? Or is it something we're not concerned about at all? So there's some pieces we're putting into place. But there's also the question around, we had the conversation as a learning support team around, okay, if they're really this low here, or they're not anywhere in terms of growth, why is there some growth in the instructional level pieces?
There's also a heavy, I find that it's a really good conversation starter with our administrators. Here's an awareness piece. Now, what can we do collectively to course correct? And each school, it might look very differently depending on number of students, type of students, number of classes and things like that. But what I've noticed is just the awareness has drawn focus to it and really helped manage how to create class schedules for into this new year, where to put those interventions, like Cheryl's saying, and where to support these students so that we can climb out of that plateau a bit.
And even for the administrators to bring awareness to which screen reports they're using, because the ones in the middle are criterion referenced. And so if they're doing their school improvement goals to measure year over year, they need to be very clear about what they're pulling and how they're looking at it and what that really means. So even though it looks like a lot of red for reading, it's really showing good growth using this particular screen and it being criterion referenced.
It's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
So Mike and I are going to talk about the Indigenous education area focus for the learning plan. I'm going to talk about 3 outcomes. So through these 3 graphs here on the work. East here, south, and the west. Of course, we want to see lots of green on our slide, which we do have. There. This is outcome data taken from report cards after term 3. So some of the blanks that are there, for example, there's a grade 9 class here. This is some data. They probably haven't taught that yet. Working on this term. There are a couple other things with smaller schools, Hangman, Pokemon, where they might flip flop. Say grade 2 or 3. We might be grade 3 outcomes this year and grade 2 next year. So there's basketball. One of the things, though, as I said, we really pushed this the last couple of years about getting 3 outcomes taught, fidelity, assessed authentically, and so on. And I think we're getting there. One thing, though, I thought was a bit of an anomaly is this cluster in yellow here is Manners School. And I know from being in the East, Manners done a ton of work around Indigenous education this year. A lot of field trips, a lot of bringing people in to talk to the kids, a real staff focus and effort there. So it started making me wonder why that is. Well, one of the reasons probably just small numbers. In some of their classes, they have 3 or 4 kids. And so if 1 or 2 students don't get an M or A, then they drop the percentages down and get a citizen yellow color. Doesn't mean they're all failing. The other question I had is around authenticity of assessments with TRIO. Is it just something because we're asking people to do it? Teachers are doing one activity, assessing and checking it off. And I think that's some work that, well, I'm not going to do it next year, but our schools is to make sure that teachers are really doing some authentic work at embedding these activities and the assessments and pieces that's using, embedding those right into the curriculum courses and so on. I know that we've done a lot of things. We heard lots of talk about schools going out to field trips. Ocean had a fellow just a couple weeks ago. I don't remember schools that attend that. Old Chapel is some money coming out from the other school. Jackie and her team put together an activity for grade 6s across the system. They were mentioning them with Kisby and I know some schools to learn that. Lots of different opportunities for our kids to have some real authentic surroundings.
Kevin, I know you've been a real advocate for Indigenous education, so I really want to thank you for that over the years. And hopefully, you know, the 3 years that you had to kind of push start this is enough to keep the momentum going for the next several years.
So any other questions? These are my favorite things to share about because these graphs here actually mirror exactly what Cheryl and Kathy are already talking about. And so the easy answer is what happens with everybody in our school division. We see similar patterns in how our Indigenous students are doing our STAR screen, our STAR assessment. So this is my ditto work. You'll see a lot of the same stuff. We do have some growth. When you're taking a look at this, I was looking at this from way back there, knowing which graph is which. It does seem like there's a lot of red. When you come up really close, you'll see that the number of students we're talking about are really small. There's not a lot of students at each grade level that self-identify as Indigenous in our school division. And so one student makes a very big difference in these graphs. However, if you look overall, you do see some general trends that align directly with what we have with the rest of our student population, where we have that growth happening in the grade 1, 2, 3 level. We have a little bit of a plateau happening in grade 4 and 5 and 6, and we see that growth happening again in grade 7 and 8. What stands out a little bit is just that these red bars are a little bit bigger than some of our red bars over there. And so we do have some, they're not necessarily interventions in place, but there are some pieces of work that our superintendents of schools have been working on over the last few years. Because we have such a small population of Indigenous students in our school division, our schools generally know who they are. And most of these students, if they are having some struggles, there's some school level plans that are taking place. We have our collaborative team meeting structure that we have set up actually facilitates having whatever supports we need put in place to make sure that we're ensuring the success for our students where the supports are needed. And as done through our RTI model as well. So I'm not going to dig in and just repeat exactly what Cheryl and Kathy said, but we are seeing the exact same patterns with our Indigenous students. The fact that it is a similar pattern is something good. So what the good work that we have going on in our schools is working for all of our students. We just need to continue to work at closing that educational debt that we have with our First Nation partners. We do have a couple of new graphs, and I'm not going to steal some thunder because Nathan will tell me that I stole someone's thunder. But these particular graphs actually align very nicely with these particular graphs. They talk about our students, in this case, specifically our First Nation and Métis students that are attending at least 80 and 90%. And if you look way from the other side of the room, there's a little bit of a decline as we go through the months. That makes sense. The more we get into school, the more opportunities there are for your attendance to go down a little bit. You do see that it kind of levels off after a while, and that also makes sense if you're a math person. You'll know that a day makes a bigger difference in September than a day in January. So our patterns, again, align very nicely here. We do actually have some work in place making sure, especially if you look at our high school level down here, our numbers are fairly low, and there could be a multitude of reasons why we don't have as great of attendance in our high school students. But we do have, through our shared service initiative with our First Nation partners, we have grad coaches that are actually in buildings in Carlisle, Stoughton, and Arcola, and they can work with some of these students, making sure that they have the supports that they need. They're missing school, making sure they're getting connected, and just kind of keeping up, making sure that they're going to be on track to graduate, whether it's in that 3-year or 5-year window. And I won't get into more detail with the attendance graph because I don't want to steal Devin's thunder, right?
Steal away, buddy.
I will turn it over to Tracy and Devin to walk us through mental health, unless anyone else has any other questions.
I never go this way.
Okay, so this first graph is very exciting to talk about. This is our Review 360 universal screen data, and this is our winter screen. And as you noted, as I noted in our last wall walk, we had our fall data up there. And so the majority of our schools only screen the students that are in the red and the yellow. Some schools, and this is grades 4 to 12, will choose to screen all of their students. But you would have seen all of these students here would have been red or green in the fall. So now we're starting to see a more balanced graph. And our students that were in the yellow, some have moved into the green, or some of the red may have moved into the green. So I knew I'd cough as soon as I got up here. In the fall, our school counselors make sure they do a check-in with all the students in the red and try to put as many plans in place and access as many supports that are available through our mental health or just safety plans at school. And so now, after the winter data, again, they will check in with the red student, the student scoring in the red, just to make sure that the plans are still in place, or if they're new students, they may need some more appropriate intervention. So this is really the good work of the school counselors that work very closely with Cheryl to make sure the plans are in place with all of the students, and the school support teams to make sure that the students, that there's regular check-ins with a lot of our students. So even though we still have students that are in extremely elevated, it's very promising to see that we're moving students along so that they're feeling safer about themselves. So any questions about 3B360? Okay, so moving into our school data. So this is now the screen in the fall. So last year we only screened in the fall. This year we screened in the spring, and again, in the fall and then in the spring. So there isn't anything overly drastic that has declined or increased here, but there is some when you're noting within each one. So when we look at advocacy, it is similar levels between, this is the grades 4 to 7, and this is, 4 to 6, and this is our 7 to 12. So they've basically gone from 6.1 to 6.2, 3.5, 3.5, but we're at the top of the provincial average for advocacy at school. So that the students are still feeling that they're adequately empowered to advocate for themselves, and there's people that are advocating for them. So that's good data for us to be seeing. Feeling safe at school. So this one, there is a slight decline in both the elementary and the middle years. Now this change suggests that we need to do some further investigating. Now in Estevan, there is a wellness committee that's been formed, and they were based on some survey results needing to talk about kids feeling safe walking to school and walking home from school. So it'll be very interesting to see what kind of interventions they come up with to support that. And in Weyburn, there is also a wellness committee to implement citywide to talk about safety. So once some of those things are in place, it'll be interesting to see if any of our data changes here. Students value school outcomes. So there's a slight decline in this, but I think when you look at this, this was the beginning of school. Everybody's excited, got their new backpacks, their new material, and now we're running into June. Everybody's tired, summer's coming, so it's not a huge decline, but I think when you really look at it, it's the same from last fall or last spring to this spring. I'll get that right, yeah. So that might be one of the very reasons why they're not feeling outcomes are so much of value there. And the last one I'm going to talk about is positive learning climate. So the grades 4 to 6, there's a slight decline. We went from 6.9 to 6.5, but it is identical to the survey taken taken last year at this time. So it's like completely identical. Again, leads us to speculate it's June and it's time for holidays. The middle years, interesting though, only had a slight decline from fall to spring, and they're higher than in the previous years. Any questions about?
Come snuggle up to Megan here and Tracy. Okay, so I'm going to just bring it home with the last little bit of our school survey and then our attendance data. And very similar to what Tracy's saying, we're seeing very, very slight declines on our positive teacher student relations, very slight, but if you look at the longitudinal data year over year, we are improving, which tells us that the course corrections that we've been putting in place and the supports that we've been having students access mental health resources are in fact working. And we see that over time. So I don't know about you guys, but I come into September feeling pretty hot to trot and ready to go and fresh, and I'm ready to tackle the world. And by June, I'm like, holy jumping, when's it over, right? So our students are very much the same way. So we just have to remember that all of a sudden, we're not drastically dropping off the edges of the earth, and it's not a five-alarm fire, but that we're seeing growth over year, which is exactly what we hope for. Positive sense of belonging, very much the same as our above results, in that there's a minor dip between the fall and spring collections. However, the overall trajectory is improving, which again is exactly what we're hoping for. Tells us that those interventions and those systems that we're putting in place, especially I want to thank Cheryl and her team of school counselors, like they really work on making sure that our students have a sense of belonging, those students that might not normally have a place to belong. Our mental health capacity builders are working on executive functioning in the schools and are expanding into the elementary schools, which also helps with that sense of belonging. Not every student is an academic or an athlete or a theater kid, but every student needs to feel that sense of belonging, and our schools are working in overdrive to make sure that every single student that is in our care belongs. Students with positive relationships, we slightly increased in the elementary students and slightly decreased with the middle school. I don't know about you, but a little bit of drama could be attached with that. Those middle school kids, right? Those hormones and things like that might affect that. But also, again, we're above the provincial norm, and we are continuing over year to improve. So really nothing to concern ourselves with, but it also tells us that we have work to do. It's not all roses, right? We have to make sure that we're continuing to work with our students on building those positive relationships and ensuring that every student in our school has someone, a trusted adult or a trusted care team in their corner. Good news, students with moderate to high levels of anxiety are decreasing. So our students are less anxious, which is great because again, we're working a lot with executive functioning skills, our school counseling teams, our mental health and well-being priority has really come to life, especially, and I've only obviously been here for 11-ish months, but I see the work that we do in mental health and well-being, and we're continually working. We're looking at social media presences. We're bringing in speakers. We're bringing in various experts to help show students that these anxiety levels are things that we can work on and we can manage, and also the difference between good stress and bad stress. And that's something I've talked to a lot of our high school administrators about, that anxiety, not all anxiety is a bad anxiety. There's some like that excitement anxiety, and there's things that help propel you forward, and there's something that we need to keep that teachable moment alive. Students with moderate to high levels of depression, we are below the provincial norm, which is good. That's what we want, and we just want to know that again, our wellness programming and our access to mental health services are making a meaningful difference in the lives of our students. When I presented in March about attendance, it was a bit doom and gloom. We weren't loving our attendance rates, but what we have noticed, and very similar to what Michael says, is the students that are attending 80% or more is improving. Okay, we had a rough winter. We had a rough winter with transportation, with illnesses, with holidays, with all sorts of hockey tournaments and things like that. Our students are coming to school more often now than they were in the winter. That's what we're hoping for. Okay. What I also want to say is that we're also working to re-engage our learners. We're not saying to a student who's missed a 3-week chunk of time, oh, sorry about your luck. We're working with them. We're dedicating time and energy into not only catching these students up, but ensuring that they have those positive sense of belonging and welcoming them, encouraging them, and working with them to make sure that school is a safe place where where they feel, because and Jackie has said it before, you know, I don't know if I'm going to do it justice the way she says it, but what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you struggle in school so you don't show up, or do you not show up because you're struggling in school? So we need to make sure that every student, that there's, like we say, success and achievement for every student in every school. And the way that we can do that is encouraging our students to get to school so that we can start tackling some of those red areas. Any questions? Comments, concerns, issues? Thank you. Yeah, let me just, I'll bring them for you only.
Thank you very much. It's a lot of work and a lot of pieces that have gone into course corrections as well as processes in school division. As we work through the provincial education plan, we're hoping that we can keep some of the screens that we have currently. For example, they're looking at a screen across the province and what that might look like. We're hoping what we've built here will be able to continue. We may have to change a screen or two depending on what comes from that. But the piece that I'm heartened by, the piece that I feel comforted by, is the fact that regardless of what screen we use, there's a process used by schools, by administrators, by system administrators, and by our division that allows us to tell how kids are doing, make improvements for them, and check again to make sure that whatever we've done has made things better for kids in school. So I thank the team for all the work on this one, and for those of you who do, thank you for everything.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to those that are coming back. Thank you to those for coming back.
Yes, thank you for those that are coming back.
Did you notice that they planned it for little black dresses?
Kathy did get the memo about the blood test.
It's actually rather rosy today.
Pardon?
Usually when I present the budget, it's blood test, and we employees like to have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seven, I believe.
No. There we go. Number 7. Okay. So that was good wall walk. Good to see the wall full again. Doesn't look great when it's empty. Okay, so now we're on with the director's personnel report, which is getting longer and longer.
Any questions regarding the HR personnel report?
Anybody have any questions for Keith?
This doesn't include the new hire.
No,
No,
it's
that will be
the
in
cutoff would
September.
have been previous to this, yes.
Okay.
There's no any comments or concerns. I could ask for a motion to approve the director's consent adjournment. I'm sorry, his director's report.
I'll move that the director's personnel report be approved as presented.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. And now we go to 7.2, which is the budget or business agenda. Sorry, Asha. First day with you. So, go ahead.
Okay. Our budget for 2025, 2026 already. So in total, our revenue, our budget for next year includes total revenues of 130.3 million, operating expenditures of 128.3 million, capital expenditures of 8.9, and a total staff of 1,157.29 full-time equivalents. Important to point out that this budget is prepared in accordance with PSAB, or Public Sector Accounting Board standards, and that does require the amortization of capital assets over their useful life.
and the recording of provincial grants at the time they have been authorized to be paid to us. So you'll notice on page 5, which was put together using PSAB, it is showing a surplus of 1.9 million on the budgeted statement of operations. And that does include the reflection of, that does reflect the recognition of $6 million capital grant towards the construction of a new school in Carlisle. However, the construction costs will not appear on this statement until the school is completed. Once completed, the total cost of the new school is expensed over 50 years as an amortization expense. So because those PSAB rules require us to do that, we do a conversion to a cash basis to kind of give us a feel of where we actually are in terms of a cash position. And when we do separate out capital from operating, we do see a $1.5 million cash deficit in this budget. Should that deficit be realized, it will be funded using accumulated surplus from prior years.
And that's the presentation.
No, I'm still going.
Oh, sorry.
I'm still going. I'm drilling down. So now I'm going to take you a little bit further into what that 130.3 million in revenues looks like. 90%, or 117.2 million, comes from various provincial operating grants. And then another 5%, that's 6 million, comes from the Ministry of Education as a capital grant towards that new school. So by far, most of our funding is funded, it comes through provincial grants. We do have a small 2%, 2.9 million from other sources, such as interest revenue, food sales, rental revenue, some federal and other grants. We have another 2.7 million, or another 2%, raised at the school level through fees, commercial sales, and fundraising to support student events and activities such as field trips, extracurricular sports, and graduation ceremonies. And then we got another 1.5 million, or 1%, coming from tuition fees. And the majority of that is for students living on a First Nation that attend a Southeast Cornerstone school. Drilling down into what that 128.3 million in operating expenses is made up of, we have 94.7 million, or 74% of our budget, for salaries and benefits. This includes 525.93 teaching FTEs and 631.36 non-teaching FTEs. We have increased total classroom teachers for next year by 20.78 FTE and have increased educational assistants by 31.3 FTE compared to prior year budget. So a significant increase in those folks that are supporting our students. Looking a little further into, oh, sorry, I wasn't quite done there. I just wanted to also comment on the other items on the chart here. We do have 20% of our budget going towards goods and services at 25.9 million. 6% for that amortization of tangible capital assets at 7.3 million. And then a 0.4, just a very small amount for debt service, which is some interest on some old capital loans. And then in addition to those operating expenditures, we also have some capital expenditures, and they totaled 8.9 million. 6 million towards that new school in Carlisle, 1.5 in school buses, 1.15 for computer hardware and equipment, which includes a computer refresh for 6 schools, networking equipment upgrades and access point upgrades, 153,000 for furniture and equipment, and 130,000 for fleet vehicle replacement. So the cash operating deficit of 1.5 million will be funded by accumulated surplus from prior years. At the end of last fiscal year, so the end of the 23-24 fiscal year, we had 18.06 million in available surplus. This surplus will decrease to 13.8 at the end of 25-26 if the budgeted deficits for 24-25 and 25-26 are actually fully realized. Now I'm done.
Thank you. Is there any questions?
No. I'm just looking at that surplus, 10 years, we're down $17 million.
Yep. On the other side, we gotta look at this last budget with an increase for the first time in a long time that didn't make up for all the years that we didn't get increases, but certainly it was a nice feeling to have a budget that we believe can meet all of our concerns. So, and increase and an increase to the classrooms. So, oh shoot. So I entertain a motion for the approval of our budget. It has to be sent into the ministry for final approval.
By the end of June, and then they should provide their approval by the end of August, so we can start the new fiscal year September with them.
Yep. I will move that the board approve the 2025-2026 budget as presented, including minor changes made to the Ministry of Education's review and approval.
Thank you, Tammy. You've heard the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Now, 7.22 is the director's evaluation. Cannot believe 3 years have gone by, Keith. It's hard to believe.
It seems like a decade.
Yeah. You are better.
Actually, it's blown right by. It is hard.
Motion for the director's evaluation.
I move that the board accept the Director of Education's evaluation review for year 3 based on the expectations and goals as set out in the board policy.
Thanks, Megan. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion's carried. And thank you, Keith. 7.23 then leads to the next motion, director's compensation. Do I have a motion?
I'll move that the board accept the recommendation. So we're doing that right now?
Yep.
That the board accept the recommendation from the Government's Human Resources Committee with respect to the Director of Education's compensation.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
More.
Just want to thank the Government's Human Resources for working on this, bringing recommendation to the board.
Kevin? So did we have a vote on yours? Motion?
Yeah.
Oh, we did? Okay, all those in favor? And now back to 7.3 is information items. Let's see what we have. Well, the quarterly financial report now. Yes, welcome, Marilyn. So we're ready to go.
Okay.
Run away.
The report was posted there for you. At this point in the year, the report is reflective of all the revenue and expenses up till May 31st of 2025. And again, we sought input from all the budget managers and all those that are involved in compiling the projection as to where we all see things ending at the end of August for the current fiscal year. And so as of the end of May, our total revenues received to date were $86,809,807. So that's just under 70% of our revenue that we had in budget. One of the pieces that we don't quite have yet that we had in budget was a lot of the capital grant piece for the Carlisle Elementary School project. That project isn't near where we thought it might be, and so those grants aren't in, and that's why that we're 3/4 of the way through the year, but our funding isn't sitting at that 75% yet. It's still under the 70. On the expense side of things, our total expenditures as of the end of May were $89,760,000.
$1,047, and that's 73.5% of our budget. So we're pretty close to 3/4 of the way, and that's right where we kind of want to be. And so as far as the projection in all of the areas, and I'll go through the variances in a minute, but total revenues in our projection, we are expecting to be at $129,977,732, which is actually not quite 3.7 million higher than what we had in budget. And the projected expenditures are $125,527,537, and that's little over 3.4 million on the expense side of things, higher than budget. And so there are some big numbers there. Biggest part of that, of course, being the collective bargaining adjustment for the teachers, and I'll touch on that as we run through the variances in the different areas. So on the revenue side of things, in grants, in this area, the Ministry of Education does provide us monthly allocation of our K-12 operating grant. The adjustments that we've made in our projection at this point in the year include a decrease of $851,166 for the enrollment change that we've seen in the current year. We've also accounted for $4,218,805, which are additional funds that the ministry had allocated for our collective bargaining adjustment costs. So that has been included in there. So the net effect on our grant revenue right now, you'll see in the report, is it shows that our revenue is an increase over budget in the grants area of $3,369,000. If we move down to the tuition and related fees, our projection is indicating that our tuition revenue will be above budget by $323,148. And that's an increase in kids, as well as some high cost funding there that we receive for those students. School generated funds, that area there is showing for our projection to be equivalent to budget. Those are the funds that are generated at the school level. And when COVID hit, we seen a big dip there in those revenue and expenses, both for school generated funds. This is the first year where we're almost getting back to where we were. So it did take a little bit of time, but those fundraising activities and all the sporting events all had are kind of getting back to where they were prior to COVID. From a revenue and cost perspective anyway. In complementary, here you'll see that our revenues are projected to be $3,880 above budget, and those are just some Kids First program, some additional grants that aren't known when budget's set, but there are some SGI grants and some community grants that are received for that area. In external services, we also, these funds here are the funds that we generate through operating the cafeterias, renting out the teacherages, driver's education programs. Funds are recorded in there as revenue as well. And we receive a federal grant for respite services through the Jordan's Principal program. You will note that in external services there, you'll see our projection being $52,644 below budget. And that is reflective of the Jordan's Principal program. There were a few changes in the last part of the year that some of those costs that were being funneled through that external part of our financial statement aren't as high as what they were in previous years. In other revenue, right now you'll see there that we are $37,000 higher than budget in miscellaneous revenue. And as I mentioned in the last projection, or in the last financial report that I presented to you, that's additional revenue that's being expected through the Microsoft class action process. And then on the expense side of things, in the governance area, our projection does have a small variance in board member expenses, professional development, elections, and governance expenses as well, but overall, that area is projected to be under budget by $16,095.
Yes, Marilyn, and with the cancellation of the Winnipeg thing, I could have undone the increase I did for convention.
Yeah, and I realized that after the fact too, but we've got a few months left, right? So
we still got time. I'm sure we'll be fine with Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless.
Yep, no doubt. In the administration expense area, our expectation is to be over budget in supplies and services, and this is reflective of additional costs associated with our accounting software upgrade. That's well in progress, and so those costs are reflected there for you. In the instruction area, there are several adjustments in this area, including the additional costs that I've mentioned regarding the collective bargaining agreement with the teachers. There are also some changes in computer equipment purchases and expensed in this area. They were in budget under capital items. However, they're always borderline at that $1,000 threshold, whether they're expensed and or capitalized. And so there's an increase there in this report. The total adjustment within the instruction area from budget, we're looking to be 3.5 million, just under 3.5 million over budget. In the plant area, the projection here shows that our furniture and equipment, building operating expenses, communications, and travel are likely to be under budget, and that the supplies and services and amortization will be slightly over budget. The net effect of these changes you'll see in our plant area is to be below budget by $31,570. There's no large items in there that really say yes or like to bring to your attention, but just some small adjustments when the submission will come in from the budget manager in that area. In transportation, allowances paid in lieu of transportation and amortization are both projected to be over budget. And that's not anything new that's come since the last report I brought to you. Contracted transportation does show being over budget by $39,500, and that's some of the additional costs that we pay to parents when we have routes down and we pay mileage out to them. The amortization is higher than budget because we did have more buses bought in the last couple of years, and so that amortization cost is higher than what we had included in our budget calculations. Tuition and related fees. In this area, that's the tuition that we pay to the Manitoba school divisions for students attending their school divisions, as well as what we pay the regional college for the students that attend there. And that's showing us under budget of $33,932. And that's tied to the numbers at the college. So we had fewer students than what we had planned at budget time. And so we just get less money from the ministry so that the expenses are offset, are lower as well. In complementary services, here the projection shows that the expenses are to be over budget by $25,548. And that, for the most part, is just some costs of the collective bargaining agreement as well. Some of the staff that fit within the complementary area, those costs are in there for you. In external services, the projection accounts for lower than expected respite payments through the Jordan's Principal program. So because our revenue is lower, the expenses that flow through there are lower as well. So that shows in that grant transfer area being lower than budget of $52,644. Then if I can get you to move to the the statement of tangible asset additions. This one's quite similar to our last report that I brought to you as well. As of May 31st, 21.8 or 22.1% of our funds budgeted for asset additions have been spent. And so the same area as land is higher. That land is that number that we added to land is the GST portion that we had to pay for the land transfer at the Carlisle School project. School buses is a little higher than what we had in budget by $182,722, and that's just a few costs, the cost increase on the buses that we had purchased. Other vehicles were below budget. We purchased the vehicles that we had in budget, but the costs were a little bit lower than expected. Furniture and equipment, our projection is to be $386,934, which is $85,600 higher than budget. That is actually for a lift that we put into one of the transportation garages, and it was accounted for in prior year budget. It just didn't, the transaction didn't happen. They couldn't supply it until current year. And so we had funds set aside in the designated surplus to cover the cost of that item. Computer hardware and audio visual, it shows there that we're going to be under spending in asset additions by $517,887, but that is actually being expensed in that instruction area that I spoke to earlier, because the items were under $1,000 each, and so they're not capitalized. They won't go on that statement. Assets under construction, there's no change there. However, it's really unknown. Like I said, that capital project in Carlisle, we do have the funds in there. We were expecting to pay them. However, the project is not where we thought it would be. And so it's kind of a wash, though. We've left the capital grant in and the expenses in. And so until we know more of where that's actually at, just left them as a status quo number as to what we had in budget. So that's the report as we sit right now. We get into wrapping up the school year, and then Shelley and I get into our fun time of the year when we jump into year end, and those numbers all change real fast.
Thank you.
So what was our budgeted deficit last year, and where are we actually at?
We're $200,000 closer to the 2.7 that we budgeted.
Okay.
We're 2.7 thousand in projections closer. We're 2.7 under. We're 200,000 under in projections.
Okay.
On our budget, and our budget was 2.7.
So we're going to be about 2.5.
Well, we don't know because it's when it scrolls out in the end.
Quarter to go.
Right.
That could be
based on projected numbers, yes, it'll be
based on
over
projections.
the
You'll let us know when the
They
plan.
wish.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just.
Yeah, based on the projections, they should 2.5.
Okay.
So it'd probably be at 2.2 maybe. Or maybe 2. That would be interesting.
They won't guess, but I'll guess too.
Yeah, that's what I think.
There haven't been a whole lot of variances that are going to offset that a lot. In fact, it looks like there's high number of variances, but there's revenue to offset for that collective bargaining. So it's kind
Which
of
that revenue for collective bargaining is just based on their estimate at this point in time. We still have to reconcile what's on what our
Even though
less
you paid
what our
more.
strike savings were last year.
Right.
correct.
Less than, but yeah, the strike savings, but you've already paid those people, you just have to reconcile it, right?
Correct.
Right, but they're gonna take that off the money they give us for, right?
Yeah.
So they've given us some money money for collective bargaining based on one of these, and we still have to do that process, right? So that money that's in revenue could be higher, could be lower.
So far, it looks very close.
Pretty close, yeah.
Yeah, it looks very close to what they've given us.
But Tammy wants to know what I want to know. What's the cash? What's the cash?
What's
in
the
the end,
cash?
right?
How many budget grants are in here that we haven't spent?
Right.
How many other grants are in here we haven't spent? We gotta pull those all out.
All right, we'll give you time.
You give them as much time as I give them by standing over their shoulders going, what is it? What is it? What is it? Go away, Keith. That's it.
Go away, Keith. That's what you hear.
That's what I hear. Thanks, Marilyn.
Thank you. You're welcome.
See you in the fall.
Yep, you bet.
And now we'll have a motion to accept the financial report, please.
That the board accept the financial report as of May 31st, 2025 as presented.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Okey-dokey. See where we are.
Good night.
Future meetings, we have the trustee academies for those who are attending virtually now. August 20th, 21st is our strategic planning to be held here. September 3rd is the strategic planning meeting. We don't know we don't know when or do we know when the teachers convention is, but it's not till later,
It's
right?
not till later.
10th.
What is it?
10th of October.
10th of October. And it's in Moosomin? No, Orpington. Okay. We do the survey later then. So are you ready for adjournment for this meeting?
I will officially adjourn the last meeting of 24-25. School year.
24, 25. 2025 school year. Heard the motion. All those in favor?